Hi, welcome back. If you're back for the second episode of reading right from The Secret of Love, and for those of you who weren't with me last month, I had talked about the fact that people were asking if this book is in audiobooks yet. It's in the works, but it takes a while to make an audiobook. It won't be my voice, it will be someone who reads books for this purpose. And so it occurred to me that why not read the book? So, sit back and put on your earbuds or your headset or however you would like to just relax and listen, because first of all, listening without distractions really helps us to have some insight, see something really important for ourselves inside of us, not something someone is going to tell us, or even when someone shares their story of their insight, which is what this book is filled with, it's still going to be your insight into the nature of your experience in life. How do we have a human experience? And the book is called The Secret of Love, Unlock the Mystery, Unleash the Magic. The mystery that we're unlocking here is this understanding about how the mind works for every human being, no matter where they are on planet Earth and no matter what age they are. So I encourage you to just clear your mind, put away any of your devices or computer or phone, and just relax. And the first in the series of reading this book last month, I read our preface to the book, and now we're going to go into chapter 1. And the name of this whole section is called Hope for Every Relationship. I'm going to highlight every, because you'd be amazed at how you could say dysfunctional a relationship has been. And when they hear something within themselves, they begin to change. And as a result, their relationship begins to change. So I'm not talking about, behavior modification or doing anything behaviorally to make yourself change. It's really a miracle that this happens. But as people start to look within themselves, change happens automatically, and always for the positive. So, it's really quite mind-blowing, and I'm so fortunate to be able to witness clients and colleagues' lives as well, because many of my colleagues have websites and webinars you can go on and watch vlogs, and I'll talk about that also when it's appropriate within the reading. So we start every chapter with a quote from our teacher. I say our, my co-author and myself in our postgraduate work, Sydney Banks. So the quotes typically come from a tape that he made called Thought and Marriage. Also, some of the quotes are from books that he's written, wonderful books. Just Google Sydney Banks and you'll see my favorite website for him is sidbanks.com. And so we're going to begin with a quote of his, which is, brace yourself, the only problem in any relationship is negative thought. I mean, it sounds so simplistic, and it is. It is really that simple, that it's our own negative thinking that gets in the way not only of our relationships across the board, but also our relationship to our own thinking. So here's a quote from a couple, Elsie and Ken. I love this quote, and that's why we put it at the very beginning. Elsie says, "I doubt we would still be married today if Sid Banks had not discovered the principles in 1973. Our relationship is better today than it's ever been." Her husband, Ken, says, "That's absolutely true, and we've been together 50 years. And since that time, this book is probably 5 years ago that happened, because it took us that length of time to get the book together. So just think about that. The best it's ever been, and they had 50 plus years of marriage. That gives you an idea of what's possible. So the first chapter is called Change Yourself, Change Your Relationship. And a quote by Sydney Banks, "Love is a feeling that comes from the energy of all things, from the creation of all life. The feeling already exists within us. It is who we are. Love is a positive feeling." You know, a lot of people talk about, oh, love hurts. But it's not love that hurts. It's our negative thinking that hurts. So here's a story by Chip and Jan. And I just wanted to say that I was at a conference, an annual conference on the 3 principles in London this summer. And they spoke and they talked about this story. So I'm going to get a hold of, hopefully I can get that tape of just that portion of the conference, and we can also put it up for you to see, because it's really nice to hear them in person talking about this. But you'll have to use your imagination. And then it'll be fun, you know, like you read a book and then you watch the movie. It'll be fun to see the actual couple. So Chip says, "Our marriage was really great for the first 2 or 3 years. After 2 or 3 years of being happy, I just couldn't help but go back to my depression, anger, and aggressiveness. I came from a dysfunctional alcoholic environment, which seemed to be the source of my unhappiness. My low mood started to weigh on our marriage. After 6 or 7 years, we were in really bad shape. Our marriage was pretty much over when Jan met Sid Banks." This is Jan. "I assume that Chip's deep state of depression was because of his childhood. At the time, we had a young son who was 3 years old, and I too was having a really hard time of it. I was unhappy most days. It was seldom that I actually felt happy. I was putting so much pressure on myself to be a good mom and a good wife. I thought I was totally failing at both of these things. When Chip was unhappy, I was unhappy. I felt really hopeless and insecure. I remember thinking, I wish I could just be happy." Chip says, "We began to hear about somebody named Sydney Banks. Friends and neighbors were starting to go to his talks, but this did not appeal to us at all because we saw these friends become happy. We thought it was ridiculous and irresponsible to be so happy-go-lucky, so we did not want anything to do with listening to somebody who was just making people happy." Jan says, "It just happened that I was with some friends of ours when they were going to see Sid." And by the way, this is all taking place on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. "As they were my ride," her friends were her ride, "I decided to go with them. I remember first walking into the house, this really beautiful, quaint little house on Salt Spring Island. I first met Barb, Sid's wife at the time, who was a gentle, welcoming person. She took me into the living room, and before I was even introduced to Sid, I knew that it had to be him. He looked over, and I saw this gentle, warm person, and even though he did not fit my description of a spiritually enlightened person, I just instantly felt this beautiful feeling. After some lighthearted conversation, the room became quiet, and Sid started to talk. I remember that as he spoke, I felt more and more peaceful. I just let down my guard and thought, how could this person know anything? He isn't from India, Tibet, or, some other faraway place, and he looked so ordinary. In spite of that, I started to open up to what he was saying. And then it dawned on me that every statement he was saying felt like pure truth. I seemed to be checking off a list in my head, saying, yes, that's true. That's true. I felt that I was hearing the essence of all the wise teachers since the beginning of time. I had always been intrigued by the fact that these teachers seemed to agree that we have to look within to find the answers to life. As I listened to Sid, something amazing happened. I realized that the wisdom I was hearing was not coming from this man. It was coming from inside me somewhere. At this point, Sid looked over and caught my eye and said, if you could see who you really are on the inside and see all the beauty and goodness that lies within you, you would have all the happiness you could ever want. I can still remember the feeling of joy and relief I felt upon hearing these words. At that point, it was as if I could see my whole life spread out before me like a beautiful pathway. I couldn't see any details of how it would look. I just knew my life was going to be fine, including my marriage. A few minutes later, Sid changed what he was talking about, and he said, if you ever find yourself in an argument with someone, especially with your spouse, my advice is to just let go of your side of the argument and give up trying to defend your point of view. If you can find a way to take your mind off it and stop talking about it, you will find this really helpful. This was a whole new concept for me. Chip and I were constantly arguing. I had always thought that whenever I was in an argument with Chip, it was important for me to win because I was usually right. Of course, we all think we're right. It seemed like we could never agree on anything. It was rare that we would just be in a nice feeling. He would try to defend what he saw, and I'd try to defend the way I saw it. But as I listened to Sid's advice on the matter, I realized that since he was sharing so much wisdom, maybe I should give these suggestions a try. I had never felt so at peace in my life as I did that day, listening to Sid talk about the spiritual side of life, as opposed to the human being, and you'll hear more about that. I remember walking up to the house, opening the door, and being so happy to see Chip. I began to tell him about my afternoon. I thought he would be thrilled as we had been searching for so long. What do you think happens, right? Chip says, I remember Jan came in the door with this huge grin on her face, and she starts telling me this whole story, and I'm listening. She essentially starts telling me that we really didn't have any problems, that all the stuff we are going through is really just thought. I am like, what? Oh my God, that is so simplistic and stupid. How could you even say it? I got really upset. I started arguing with her, and she started arguing with me. Then I saw something for the first time. Jan just stopped, and she just looked at me. And the look wasn't like aggression. It was just beautiful. As I look back on it now, a book of love. It's so funny because we edited this book 100 million times, and I still get touched reading this. Anyway, so she looked back with a look of love, and then she just walked away. This really ticked me off. In my mind, she should have stood there and argued it out with me. Later, as I watched her playing with our son, looking really happy, I remember my thought was, well, she'll be back to normal in the morning. She just had some kind of temporary euphoria listening to this guy talk. When I woke up in the morning, I could hear singing coming from the kitchen. My thought was, what is this? There is never singing in my house in the kitchen. It was Jan. She was in a really great mood. She tried to tell me more about what she was seeing differently. I just would not have it. This lasted for a couple of weeks. I began to feel more and more desperate to have Jan back where we were before. I was so lost because the pattern of our marriage, the pattern of our arguments had just suddenly been ripped out from under me, and I did not know what to do. I really wanted it back the way it was, as strange as that sounds now. It seems to me that all people and couples have their red buttons that you should never push. Things you should never talk about, things you can guarantee will set off an argument. And so I started pushing Jan's buttons. The first few times I could see her get upset, but I would always see that moment when she just pulled back and then did something that seemed ridiculous, like asking if she could fix me a cup of tea, or she would just go off for a walk. This continued until one time she teared up and got really upset. I felt satisfied. I finally got her back to the person I knew. I'd made it happen again. But she stopped. She pulled herself together and offered me a cup of tea. I remembered this as the loneliest time of my life because I was totally on my own. It was like we had been in this serious dance, like the tango, throwing our heads back and forth, and then Jan just stopped and quietly sat down. As I kept doing the tango by myself, it began to feel silly, but at the same time, I could not stop. Jan, one day, I was reflecting on what Sid said, that inside of everybody is all that goodness. I happened to look over at Chip. It suddenly occurred to me, oh my goodness, I have been waiting for Chip to change, and he doesn't need to change. He's beautiful just the way he is. In that moment, when I was looking at Chip, I saw past the anxious, intense expression on his face. It was as if he changed before my eyes, and I saw the Chip I first fell in love with. I just saw his essence. That changed the way I related to him. I could see that there wasn't anything wrong with him, regardless of his state of mind. I had begun to see the innocence in myself, and this helped me to see the innocence in my husband. I would still get frustrated about his behavior, but as soon as I calmed down, lo and behold, I began to see his behavior change. Chip. One day, Jan was on the floor playing with our son Peter, and the sun was streaming in through the window. I saw the light shining on her face and on her hair. I was looking at them, and out of nowhere, a deep feeling of love just welled up from within me. I remember thinking, it really was just thought, and there was nothing to do but surrender to that beautiful feeling. From that day, our marriage really changed. We went from having trouble being around each other to living with a feeling of love for each other. I'm going to read that again, that line. We went from having trouble being around each other to living with a feeling of love for each other. Being parents became a more joyful experience as well. And within a year or so, our daughter Heather was born. We have our ups and downs just like everybody else, but very little upset. I can honestly say that our love and our relationship has gotten better every day. We continue to listen to and read Sid's words, and we will be forever grateful for the understanding we have found and the life that we have been given. Whew. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? And that, that's really any couple who sees at a deep enough level that their whole experience is coming from their own thinking. So then we write, my co-author Chris Heath and I write a reflection. As you read this story, you can feel that something changed within both of these people. As they each had separate insights, they changed in different ways at different times. improving the quality of their relationship. Jan's new understanding allowed her to live in a more peaceful, loving feeling, which had a positive impact on their interactions. That is why we call this chapter Change Yourself, Change Your Relationship. The feeling this couple described is a feeling that you are looking for in your relationship, but it is really found within yourself. In fact, we have found that even if just one person in a relationship gains an understanding of how thought creates experience and then lives in a nicer state of mind, the relationship will improve. We call this feeling many things: gratitude, mental well-being, kindness, grace, love, and so on. The state of love and well-being is a self-righting power that we're born with. It's innate. All babies return to a more peaceful, calm state of well-being once they are past their upset. We never lose that self-righting ability. We just lose track of the fact that it is always within us. We call this innate health, in that we are born with the ability to live in a healthy state of mind. Some people naturally live in this state of mind more than others, and as a result, they usually have long, happy marriages. The following is an example of someone who knew nothing about the principles intellectually, yet he certainly tapped into the promise of what this understanding holds for all of us. It's a little story, someone that Chris knew, named Wayne, that he wrote on Facebook, and we thought it was worth putting into the book. So today, May 21, is our 44th anniversary. Because the reason we put in the book is for the feeling behind it. So just catch on to the feeling. And by the way, when you catch on to the feeling, that feeling is yours. It can't come from anywhere else. It's coming from within you. So our 44th anniversary, I got to marry the most beautiful person I know on a most beautiful day. It was 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon that we said, I do. It was 95 degrees that day. I never noticed as I was enchanted by the girl in white. I remember looking at my parents and then her mom and thinking, this is right. As I watched her walking up the aisle on the arm of her dad, I knew I had made the right choice. My eyes became moist with happiness. We have been through a lot of ups and downs, good times, bad times, sickness and health, riches and poorness. But I always felt the good Lord put us together for a reason. Happy anniversary to my sweetheart, love of my life, soulmate, kindest, most loving, beautiful girl in the world. Love you, Mims. I never met this couple, but you can just feel the feeling that was behind that, very heartfelt. That's the feeling you want to look for in life. I could be walking through a grocery store and that feeling will just come. Sometimes I have to admit it's coming because I am noticing a little baby in a grocery cart or something. So, it's just that feeling is what you're looking for. I'm going to try to get through this reflection. And there's, because we just have a few minutes more. Okay, I'll see how much I can get through. And we'll pick up next month on this reflection. You can hear in this story that Wayne still has deep feelings of love throughout 44 years of marriage to the same person. Wayne posted this on Facebook. A long-term marriage doesn't have to get old or boring and stale. It can get deeper, and you can create an experience beyond your expectations. How lucky for Wayne that he's still in touch with these feelings of love 44 years later. Love is our default setting when we're not wanting it or looking for it. In fact, it's who we are at our core. There's nothing to seek, only to express what is already yours. Another way to say it is that you already are what you seek. The essence of who we are is pure love. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to say just a few things about how to find it within yourself. It's when you quiet down your personal thinking, it's when you clear your mind, that's when you're going to feel a deeper feeling. So look for that. I also learned from Sid Banks that if you look at what is in life, in your personal life too, rather than looking at what isn't, it's so hard. I meant to say it's so easy to slip into looking at what isn't in life, complaining in our mind and why don't things work easier? I used to do that when I'd get on the phone with customer service about something and be left on hold. I'd get really irritable. And I began to realize that that's so unnecessary. I don't have to work myself up about it. It's going to take whatever time it takes. And in fact, I've had some really sweet comments, short, but, an exchange of a few sentences with the customer service person. And I've had clients too who that's their work is in customer service. And they say, they tell me that I would never believe how they are treated by people. And, I explain, as awful as it is, not to take it personally, because it is just an indication of where they're coming from, where their state of mind is. It's all about state of mind. That's the secret of love. And so I encourage you to, listen to the many podcasts that are available. You can find them on the web under 3pgc.org. And just have, set aside some quiet time for yourself whenever you can. In fact, I like to do this when not in my best state of mind, because I'll just start listening to Sid on the sidbanks.com website, or some of my colleagues on 3PGC, and my state of mind lifts. You can just feel it. You can actually feel your state of mind when it goes down in the tanker, and then when it starts rising up again. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you really want to feel in life. I'm going to end with a really quick shout out to a company that is in West Hartford Center called BK and Company, because that's where this necklace is from. And I bought this in order to go to speak at our annual conference in London I guess it was more than last month, it was in June. And I brought in my own jacket that I had in my closet that I had matched up with my co-author for the book. And they matched it to this, and not only this necklace, which I love, it's made of piano wire by a very creative artist, but they folded it so perfectly so that it wouldn't be wrinkled on the plane ride going to the conference. So, that is the feeling of pure love, when you get that kind of customer service and that kind of attention. And that's what you're looking for. And that's, when you feel that, you can't help but give that. Okay, look forward to seeing you next month. Bye for now.